So in terms of the tools that I think are most impactful, especially for the solopreneur out there, two things, well, really three things come to mind. First of all, having a scorecard. So having a weekly set of numbers that you are looking at that truly give you a pulse on what is happening in your business. Typically, these are going to be leading indicators. They're not things like a P&L, right? They're numbers that you can influence on the weekly. If you're looking at them weekly, you can see that things are off track. You can actually make adjustments, right? 52 times over a year instead of looking at monthly numbers. That's the power of a weekly scorecard. So what are those 5 to 15 numbers that really tell you what's happening in your business on the weekly? So that's one tool. Another tool would be rocks. And these are essentially 90-day priorities, right? In our brains, we can really only focus for about 90 days at a time. So setting rocks, things that you've got, big priorities that you've got to get done over the next 90 days, really, really helpful to keep you on track. Now, again, that fits in with the vision piece, which I know we'll talk about in a sec, right? Because it's all got to tie in to where you're headed long-term. But you're chunking down that vision piece, how you're going to get there, into 90-day sections. And then the last thing is, I know you've experienced this. The one thing that people talk about all the time is the level 10 meeting. And this is a weekly meeting that you're going to have with theoretically your leadership team. Now, you're a solopreneur. Maybe you're like me, you have an assistant. So you and your assistant, an hour or 90 minutes if you need it, right? Each week you're going to get together. And there is something very special about this meeting format, because it gets down to the heart of what you need to focus on. It's not another meeting that could have been an email, right? It's not a meeting where we're like, what's the agenda? What are we talking about this week, right? It literally is same day, same time, same agenda, starts on time, ends on time. It is a very specific meeting, and there's a very specific meeting format, which I actually would love to hear from you guys, because when you implemented this, it's weird at first, right? Because it is different than what you would normally do in a meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to jump in there because I was the one kind of running that L10, right? Because you kind of divvy roles up and we have different roles. But when we decided who was going to run that, it was up to me. And at the end of it, you actually rank kind of how that meeting went. And it's called an L10 because you're supposed to like get a score from 0 to 10, right? And
Level 10, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, the first week I got 3s all around, right? So Anthony gave me a 3, Becky gave me a 3, I gave myself a 3. It was terrible, right? We weren't on time. The agenda didn't get covered kind of in the order that we wanted it to. We weren't working our way through issues.
I tell you, Cameron, it hurt me to give you a 3.
Oh, it did not. You were busy eating grapes in the background, right?
You're right.
But I'll tell you what it did, man. It motivated me, right? I'm like, you know what? This is not acceptable. This has got to get cleaned up. And so you take the time, you go in there, you prep, right? You realize kind of what you need to get prepared for. And you come back the next week, and I don't know what I got the next week. It wasn't 10s, but maybe it was 7 and 8s. But, pretty quickly, we've been kind of rolling at 9s and 10s, right? Good. Throughout. Yeah. And so that feels good. But more importantly, man, we're actually getting through some of the stuff that we need to get through as a small business. And so in that meeting, number one is you're looking at the scorecard. And for us, man, we were tracking maybe like 3 things, right?
Yeah.
3
things.
Yeah. We were looking at 3 things, right? For a couple of years, that's all we would measure was like 3 things.
Yeah.
We started meeting with you, and I think we built that thing out to almost 20.
Yeah.
Right. And so now every week we go through and we look at all these KPIs, right? 20 of them. And we're looking at how it's going, how it's reviewing, and then we move on. And then also in that meeting, there's a whole section where you do issues, where you're talking about what's important. And as small business owners, there's always something that comes in that's super urgent, right? Like, hey, it's got to get done today. And so one of those issues or in that issue section is you make time to talk about things that need to get discussed, but maybe aren't super urgent right there.
Yeah.
And so that for us, I think those 2 things have really, really been fundamental in us kind of moving forward just on what we're trying to get accomplished.
There's so much accountability. Oh, sorry, Anthony, go ahead.
No, let me just add, I surprisingly agree with Cameron here. What I'll just add a little bit. what is great is, as an entrepreneur, we have all these things that we want to take care of, all these issues or things we want to do.
Mhm.
But now part of that meeting is we have an issues list. So we go ahead and put them on there. And I think that's allowed to lower my stress level, knowing, okay, I know this issue we got to handle, but we have a process where we are going to address it, which allows me to be able to focus on other things. And what I like is the accountability is, we're each in charge of certain numbers.
Yep.
I mean, one that I'm in charge of we do count our YouTube subscribers and how many posts we have on social media. So I need to I'm held accountable every week. Am I hitting our goal? And so it makes me thrive with our team. Hey, we need to get some more of the social media posts because I have my L10 meeting coming up. So it's allowing that focus is allowing us to execute better.
Part of that, so that was what I was going to say, was the accountability piece, because you do have to face your peers and share with them whether or not those numbers that you're accountable for are on track or off track.
Yeah.
You're also sharing whether or not your 90-day goals, your rocks, your 90-day priorities, right, are on track or off track. And nobody wants to come into a meeting and be like, I didn't quite get that done, right? Like it is, so it pushes you, it creates that discipline, right? It's like built in because it's human nature I don't want to come into a meeting and say, I don't know why that thing's off track. I screwed up this week, right? You don't want to do that. And on the issue side of things, because there's a compartment for everything in EOS, you don't lose things and you get things out of your head and on paper and compartmentalized somewhere, right, in the organization. So you're not losing things, and that clears your head. It also prevents, if you're putting just issues on and you know that once a week you're going to meet with your leadership team and discuss the issues, it prevents hey, Cam, I'm just going to pop in your office real quick. I just wanted to ask you about this, right? The stuff that derails our day, those interruptions, I call them drive-bys, right? It prevents that because it gives you a place that weekly, we're going to discuss this already. I can just wait until then. It's very powerful.
I will say, Nina, that stopped some of Cameron coming and knocking on my door, but he still needs some mentoring. So it's not going to stop all of those knocks, but it is going to lower them.
I bet he's grateful that you're willing to mentor him, though.
Super grateful.
Yeah. We got that on record.
He thanks his lucky stars on the daily.
And speaking of thankfuls, I'm thankful for the traction piece, right? Is the tools, right? Because everybody wants to have a successful business and you can work really hard, but unless you got those pieces of the tools that you can kind of work on and put in place, you're just spinning your wheels. And so that traction piece for us has been just amazing here in the last 9-10 months.
That's great. It's great to hear. And that was what was so game-changing for me that I wanted to share with everybody. The vision piece equally as important, but the day-to-day that this creates, the discipline that it creates, the structure it creates on the day-to-day is so powerful.
You want to see the entire episode? Click here. If you want to learn how investors use infinite banking to increase their returns and lower their taxes, click here. If you want to see if infinite banking is for you and you have some questions, hop on a discovery call with us and one of our coaches. The link for that will be in the description.